Good morning, students. Today we will study about respiration. Till time we have studied human respiratory system and respiration in plants. Now in this video we will study about types of respiration, that is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Second, the difference between breathing and respiration. Respiration is the biological process in which oxygen breaks off the food and we get energy. Not only energy, in this process, carbon dioxide, that is the gaseous waste, and water is also released. Let's see this with the help of a equation. C6H12O6, that is glucose, that is food. The burning of food, that is glucose, in the presence of oxygen gives out, what is the product? Carbon dioxide plus water, and a lot of energy is released. So this is called respiration. And which type of respiration is this? Aerobic respiration, because of the presence of oxygen here. So respiration is the burning of food in the presence of oxygen. So it is aerobic respiration basically. Now the difference between breathing and respiration. Breathing is taking oxygen inside and giving out carbon dioxide. It is a physical process. It involves lungs basically, and respiration is a wider term, bigger term, which includes breathing. So here it's like inhaling and exhaling the air. At the same time, breaking of food and release of energy is also involved. So this one is a bigger term which involves breathing. It is a biochemical process, and it is more or less physical process, because in this it is just intake of oxygen and exhaling of carbon dioxide. Here lungs are involved basically, and here lungs as well as mitochondria, because burning of food and release of energy takes place in mitochondria. So here lungs will be there because it includes breathing. At the same time it includes mitochondria also. So as a revision, see here it is just the intake of oxygen and exhaling of carbon dioxide. This one, it is breathing, physical process, and involves lungs. Here lungs and mitochondria both are involved. Biochemical process, because chemistry is also involved, biochemistry, where a lot of energy is released. So this is the difference between breathing and respiration. Now we will move ahead to the next topic, that is types of respiration. In this slide we will see and we will learn about types of respiration, one, and second is the different ways by which glucose breaks off. Let's see. Glucose is there. Glucose, which is 6 carbon molecule, because its formula is 6,6H12O6. In the cytoplasm of the cell, because we are talking about respiration, now breathing is done, respiration. So in cytoplasm it breaks off into pyruvate, and pyruvate is 3 carbon molecule. This one is 6 carbon molecule. So one molecule of glucose when breaks off, it gives 2 molecules of pyruvate, because this one is 6 carbon molecule and this one is a 3 carbon molecule. And this break off of glucose into pyruvic acid or pyruvate happens in cytoplasm, and this process is known as glycolysis. It is not written here, glycolysis. glycolysis. Glyco means glucose, lysis means breaking. So breaking of glucose molecule, one glucose molecule into pyruvate is known as glycolysis. So one glucose molecule contains 6 carbon molecule and it breaks off into 3 carbon molecules, pyruvate. So one glucose molecule gives 2 molecules of pyruvate. And this process is glycolysis, and glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. Now moving ahead, now the fate or the destiny of pyruvate depends whether it will get oxygen or not. For example, if this pyruvate which has broken down in cytoplasm from glucose by the process of glycolysis, if it gets oxygen, it means you are providing pyruvate oxygen, then carbon dioxide, the gaseous waste of the body, water and a lot of energy will be produced. Okay, and by chance if it doesn't get oxygen, so in the lack of oxygen or in the absence of oxygen, two cases can be there. For example, pyruvate doesn't get oxygen, and when will it happen? For example, if we do rigorous exercise, so our muscles will not get good supply of or fast supply of oxygen. In that case, this pyruvic acid will break off into lactic acid and energy will be released, but it will be lesser energy, not very much. Here it will be a lot of energy will be there. Okay. Second case is again, if for example in case of yeast, the microorganism or bacteria, if they don't get oxygen supply, they can respire anaerobically also. Anaerobically means in the absence of oxygen also, and they can produce ethanol, that is alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy. Here again lesser energy will be there. So these two cases, first two cases will be of anaerobic respiration, and this case is of anaerobic, and this one is aerobic respiration. So once again, there are two types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic respiration means, aerobic respiration is this one, aerobic respiration, which means the breaking of glucose into pyruvic acid in cytoplasm, and then in the presence of oxygen again it breaks off into carbon dioxide, water, and a lot of energy will be released in the form of ATP. Okay, so this is aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is a type of respiration in which the food is oxidized completely in the presence of oxygen and a lot of energy is released, and this step happens in the mitochondria. This one happens in the cytoplasm. So this portion is showing the aerobic type of respiration. Now moving ahead to anaerobic type of respiration. In anaerobic type of respiration, this step will be the same in these. This one is anaerobic respiration. Okay, so glucose will break off into pyruvic acid, and case 1, if it is your muscle cell, you are doing a lot of exercise and now your muscles are not getting good supply of oxygen, it means lack of oxygen. Now pyruvic acid which is produced in cytoplasm of your cell will break off into lactic acid and energy. Again, in case of second cases, for example, the case gets changed and this is a case of yeast or the microorganism, they will also not get oxygen. Okay, after this step, like glucose breaks off into pyruvic acid, then pyruvic acid in yeast doesn't get the good supply of oxygen, so they can respire anaerobically also. Anaerobically means without supply of oxygen. So they will produce ethanol, alcohol. Ethanol is a type of alcohol, then carbon dioxide, and energy will be produced. Here in these two cases, because they are anaerobic type of respiration, lesser amount of energy will be produced, and in this case, which is aerobic respiration, a lot of energy will be produced. So this one is aerobic respiration, and this whole is the example of anaerobic respiration. So, with this you can get the quick review of aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Now, moving ahead to the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. As I told you, aerobic respiration occurs in the presence of oxygen. So, here oxygen is required in aerobic respiration, and anaerobic respiration, it happens in the absence of oxygen. Oxygen is not required there. Then glucose is completely oxidized. It completely gets burned off. Why? Because of the presence of oxygen. Here the oxidization is there, but because there is less supply of oxygen, so we can't say the glucose is oxidized completely. The glucose is oxidized partially, halfway. Okay, and here the products will be ATP. Energy is produced in both cases, but yes, here 38 ATP will be produced, and here only 2 ATPs will be produced. Okay, in this case. So, in aerobic respiration 38 ATPs, a lot of energy will be released, and in anaerobic respiration where glucose is oxidized in the absence of oxygen and it is oxidized partially, so only 2 ATP will be produced. Fourth point, lesser quantity of energy in case of anaerobic, and obviously more energy is released in case of aerobic respiration. Then fifth point states that cytoplasm and mitochondria are the site of breakdown, because cytoplasm, in cytoplasm which process happens? Glycolysis. And glycolysis is the common step between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. May it be aerobic or anaerobic, glycolysis will happen in both the steps, because glycolysis is the breaking of glucose into pyruvic acid. So, if it is anaerobic or anaerobic, irrespective of it, this step is common and similar. Okay, that's why here it anaerobic only cytoplasm is involved, but you know, in case of aerobic, later on in mitochondria, when it gets oxygen supply, then 38 ATP will be released. Now, you can see in this slide also I have given the characteristic of aerobic respiration. It takes place in the presence of oxygen. Food is completely broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and a lot of energy is released. Mitochondria are the site means place where this respiration happens, because we know mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. This we have already read in 9th class. A brief review of anaerobic respiration. It takes place without oxygen. Ana means without oxygen, and it happens in case of yeast and bacteria, where they can respire anaerobically. Even if you don't give them oxygen, they can respire in that, and they produces ultimate product will be alcohol, carbon dioxide, and small amount of energy, that is 2 ATP will be produced. And this process where the yeast and bacteria, they convert the food, that is glucose, into some alcohol, this is also known as fermentation. So, anaerobic respiration in yeast and bacteria is also known as fermentation. Here lesser amount of energy is produced, that is 2 ATP. Okay, sometimes this anaerobic respiration happens in our muscle cells also, not only in yeast cell, it happens in muscle cells also. When we do a rigorous exercise and our muscles do not get good and quick supply of oxygen, they start respiring anaerobically. They start respiring anaerobically means they respire in the absence of oxygen also. But as a product in place, like lactic acid is produced, and this lactic acid is responsible for the muscular cramps which we feel after doing rigorous exercise. You must have also felt like that. Thank you very much. Revise the topic well.